Hello and welcome to another edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm Adrian Atkinson. We have a lot to share, beginning at our news desk. That and some informative human interest features await you after this break.
If you no want pop down and fenke, you fi burn mosquito and run with dengue. So no make water settle in open container. For them to read up under the danger. Usher them out, run them away. Zap them with the zapper and down them with spray. Use mosquito net and mosquito screen. Protect your household, now make them come in. If you no want pop down and fenke, if you burn mosquito and run with dengue.
A message from the Ministry of Health.
Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh, and this is your JIS News for Monday, March 11. Jamaica has met all targets under the International Monetary Fund's IMF Precautionary Stand-By Arrangement. This review covers the period ending December 2018.
The Government of Jamaica has met all 22 structural benchmarks under the Standby Arrangement to date, including 8 macro-fiscal structural benchmarks and 14 structural benchmarks for the Public Sector Reform Program.
The Finance Minister was speaking at the Joint Government of Jamaica IMF press conference for the 5th review on Friday. In her remarks, IMF Mission Chief for Jamaica, Dr. Uma Ramakrishnan, lauded the government on its performance over the review period.
Strong implementation of the reform program continues, with the sustained commitment yielding tangible dividends for the people of Jamaica. The economy is growing, and so we see a lot of positive dividends coming from these economic reforms.
The IMF Executive Board is scheduled to consider the 5th review in April. The board's approval will unlock the release of approximately $223 million, which will bring the total sum available to Jamaica to $1.4 billion. Minister Clarke says that barring unforeseen circumstances, the government will not need to draw down any of the funds available under the standby agreement, which he says is good news for Jamaica. The 6th and final review of the government's performance under the 3-year program is slated for June 2019. Jamaica is to record its lowest level of debt in nearly 2 decades at the end of the current financial year on March 31. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clarke made that announcement last week as he opened the 2019-2020 budget debate in Parliament. He said the debt-to-GDP ratio would reach 96%, the first time it would be below 100% in almost 2 decades.
This is a national achievement of which all Jamaicans can be proud. Jamaica is the world's only example in recent times of a small country that has reduced its public debt by the equivalent of half of its gross domestic product in a short time frame, without handouts, without bailouts, or without bilateral debt support from friends or partners.
Minister Clarke said the achievement ranked among the country's greatest bipartisan successes. Meanwhile, the finance minister has revealed that government will be making $1.8 billion available for loans to the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs, in the new fiscal year. Dr. Clarke says $1 billion of the allocation will be provided through the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation,
of which $600 million is to provide loan guarantees through a credit enhancement and loan guarantee fund to MSMEs who have limited or no collateral required to access loans. There's $400 million to finance risk capital financing for MSMEs, which is a 4-fold increase from the $100 million in 2018-19.
The Ministry of Finance will make another $763 million available for microbusinesses with sales of less than $10 million, as well as for a line of credit between the Ministry and the Development Bank of Jamaica. In other news, the Ministry of Labour is moving to address some of the issues affecting productivity and growth. Portfolio Minister Shahini Robinson says the work will be done through the Productivity Centre.
Through the Jamaica Productivity Centre, the ministry is in the not too distant future will be rolling out its plans to increase productivity, starting from the homes, schools, and into the world of work.
Minister Robinson was speaking at the recent opening of the Hanover Parish Office. She said strategies would examine ways to deal with matters such as transportation, ease of conducting business transactions, and activities at the workplace.
The long lines that we see at the various places where we do business and in the traffic, they are hindrances to productivity and must be addressed. In the homes, how we perform our household chores, can we do it in a shorter time while conserving on energy, time, and water? These are some of the issues we intend to look at as a ministry in our bid to enhance productivity and by extension increase our GDP and our standard of living.
The local government ministry will be expanding its funding for educational assistance come April. Currently, each elected councillor receives $300,000 to assist needy students with back-to-school preparations. That amount is to be increased to $500,000. Portfolio Minister Desmond McKenzie says each poor relief department will also be granted $1.5 million for educational provision.
We want dons for education, not dons for badmanism. And it is our responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, to save this generation of young people who continue to excel, continue to show potential.
The local government minister was addressing the recent Board of Supervision's awards ceremony in St. Anne. It recognized the children whose parents were clients of the board. 64 students received awards for high academic performance in the 2018 Grade 6 Achievement Test, CAPE and CSEC. The Board of Supervision was established under the Poor Relief Act to supervise and monitor the delivery of the poor relief services through municipal corporations. And finally, government will be spending $20 million this fiscal year to provide solar energy to schools. The solar energy project aims to reduce current electricity bills at the targeted schools by between 40 to 70%. This year's funding, among other things, will be used to retrofit, upgrade, and repair the structure of school roofs to accommodate the solar panels. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.
Jamaica's Chief Justice Brian Sykes is leading the charge on some critical plans for the court system. Watch closely as he lays out interventions to strengthen the rule of law in Jamaica land we love.
Good evening, Jamaica. I am Brian Sykes, your Chief Justice. When I took the oath of office 1 year ago, it was with a deep sense of gratitude and humility. I understood the complexity as well as the magnitude of the work that needed to be done to transform the judicial arm of government with excellence and efficiency at its core. It was also with the recognition that if Jamaica is to achieve Vision 2030, the Jamaican judiciary must remain strong and maintain its integrity. In this regard, I must recognize the contribution of previous Chief Justices and judges. I am making it my mandate for us to have excellent courts. Excellent courts rest on 3 pillars. First, trial and hearing date certainty. This means that the trial or hearing takes place on the day it is listed to begin. We no longer set multiple trials for each courtroom, as this always leads to adjournments. Unnecessary delays will not be accommodated. We must get to the point where matters begin on the day they are scheduled and move away from the culture of multiple adjournments and mention dates. The culture shift has begun to produce desirable results in the Supreme Court and the parish courts. The Court of Appeal should also increase its disposal rate, as since January 2019, there are now 3 additional judges, with 3 more to be added later in the year. The consequence of hearing and the trial date certainty is that cases are disposed of within stated time standards. In Jamaica, this means disposing of cases within 24 months of entry into the courts. In some divisions of the Supreme Court, the Gun Court, and the parish courts, The statistics show that more than 100 cases are being disposed of for every 100 cases filed. For the first time last year, 7 parish courts had a clearance rate of over 100%. This has set the platform for us to clear the current backlog within 6 years. Secondly, excellent courts are efficient. Time, human and material resources are properly utilized to produce the best outcomes. It is our goal to decrease the wait time for the adjudication of some matters. For example, in divorce matters, once the documents are submitted error-free, the decree absolute will be issued within 16 weeks. By December 31, 2019, there will be no outstanding divorces. That is our commitment to you. In relation to matters of probate and letters of administration, that is, establishing the validity of wills and dealing with the estates of persons who died without a will, once all documents are submitted error-free, the Supreme Court staff will ensure that these take no longer than 12 weeks. That is our commitment to you. Thirdly, excellent courts mean that we have a culture of service among staff and judges. Research has shown that the perception of court users is influenced by how they are treated and not only by the outcome of their cases. Therefore, as our customer service charter states, court staff will be courteous, respectful, fair, and prompt. We have ongoing training for court staff to improve their basic customer service and stress management skills. This will continue as we aim for first world standards. My vision is for our judiciary to be the best in the Caribbean region in 3 years and among the best in the world in 6 years, beginning March 1, 2019. To support this vision, I give my commitment to put in place measures so that by December 31, 2019, all outstanding judgments in the Supreme Court will be delivered. As of 2020, a judgment should be delivered within 90 days, and in exceptional cases, 180 days following completion of the case. Courts will start on time and the trial time productively utilized. All stakeholders, judges, court staff, witnesses, jurors, attorneys at law, police officers, and others, despite the many challenges they face, must resolve to come to court to assist in the administration of justice. The judiciary that I lead will ensure that Jamaica is the place of choice to live, work, raise families, do business, and retire in peace and safety. Join the judiciary and partner with us as we work to strengthen the rule of law in Jamaica, land we love. Thank you.
Do you know what a disability is? A permanent loss of function in any part of your body is called a disability. Some people are born that way. Others get a disability because of an illness or an accident. This doesn't have to prevent you from living a full life. The Disabilities Act will protect your right to work, raise families, or do business like anyone else. Visit jcpdja.com. A message from the JCPD, an agency of the Ministry of Labour and Social Security.
So we're in the budget season, and during this time, we hear all kinds of big terms, like inflation and net international reserves. But what do they mean? Financial analyst Dennis Chung will be here to break down those terms inside Budget 101. Now let's start with the term budget.
A budget is really just an expectation of what you want to happen. And the reason why you do a budget is because you want to ensure that you are getting the revenues that you expect. So the budget allows you now to create the initiatives around that and also to control the expenses so that you don't spend more than you earn.
Miscellaneous 5,000, lunch 5,000. Wow, my budget looking good for this month. At least I don't owe nobody.
Well, the government does practically the same thing. This is how the process works. The budget process begins with a budget call being sent out to all ministries, departments, and agencies of the government. Included in this call is a specific figure or what is called a budget ceiling in which they should operate. Cabinet then decides based on their programs if they should get more money. After that, the budget book is prepared and sent to the printing office. The Governor General then makes his throne speech outlining the government's plan, and usually later in the day, the Finance Minister tables the budget in the lower house. The Standing Finance Committee of Parliament will then meet to query the details or make changes to the budget where necessary. That's followed by the various budget presentations in Parliament. When those have been made, the budget is passed and the ministries, departments, and agencies begin to receive their monthly allocations. And that's how the process works. So now that you understand the process, let's move on to the terms. Take, for example, economy.
The economy is really the accumulation of all the activity that takes place from working. So all the activities that is into production or consumption or anything like that, that has a value, that creates a value.
There's also something called GDP deflator, which measures the changes in the overall prices.
All the production in manufacturing, the output that comes from that, all the tourism services, all the value added created in the economy for that year is your gross domestic product. GDP is your production locally. Your economy is all economic activity that happens. So your GDP is really a subset of your economy.
Then there's this one. So if I hear that inflation is going up by 10%?
Inflation is just the movement of prices from one year to the next. Or you can look at it from even 1 month to the next, because we do measure it monthly. It means that on an average, you're paying 10% more than you did before. Now, remember that inflation is just a measurement, an average measurement based on the basket of goods that they measure. The fiscal deficit is really looking at all your revenues and your recurrent expenditure. So you take your revenues, how much money do I earn from taxes, how much money do I get from grants, and then I look at my recurring expenditure and deduct that from my revenue. We've been running a fiscal surplus for a few years now. If your expenditure is greater than your revenues, then that is when you have a fiscal deficit.
Net international reserves, or NIR, as Dennis Chung puts it, is simply the difference between Jamaica's foreign assets and foreign liabilities.
The net international reserve is really, after you look at all the charges that you have against your reserve and all the assets you have in terms of foreign exchange reserve, how much is left in terms of net. What the NIR measures is really how many weeks of imports we can safely have. So I think the standard is about 12 weeks of imports of NIR you want to have. So if you are importing $100 per week, right? You want to know that you have 12 times $100 at least sitting at the BOJ, that if there's an emergency and there's a shutdown of production and there's no value created in the economy for whatever reason at an extreme, at least I have 12 weeks of money there that I can go and buy things from overseas and pay my overseas debts and keep my economy moving. Your macroeconomy is your overall economy. And most times when people talk about the economy, they're really talking about the macroeconomy. So how has inflation moved overall? The microeconomy now looks at the economy from the point of view of the individual or the firm. So my economy from a micro point of view might be different from the macroeconomy.
Recurrent expenditures are expenses that always come on the budget, like wages and salaries. Think of it like your utility bills, water, electricity, or cable. And with that, we conclude Budget 101. I'm sure you've all learned something, and I'll give all of you a passing grade. I'm Theodore Henry. Do take care.
Jamaica joins the 52 other member nations of the British Commonwealth in marking Commonwealth Day. The celebration provides an opportunity to promote understanding on global issues, international cooperation, and the work of Commonwealth organizations. More on this in our next feature.
There's something else that's really important that binds the 2.3 billion people together. And that is, in 2015, the world made a decision that we would together agree the Sustainable Development Goals. That's a template now for every country in the world, but it's a template for every single one of us in our Commonwealth. We have the same agenda. We also have the same agenda on climate change. COP21 and the implementation of that, COP22. Why? Because we know in this region that the existential threat of climate change is real. I'll say that again, 60% of that population is going to be under the age of 30 by 2030. So the people in this room who are currently under the age of 30, you are not only today's leaders, you are tomorrow's as well. And that future is going to be decided by what you do and what you fail to do. Because lots of people will tell you that doing nothing is not a choice. It is. That doing nothing is not making a decision. It is. If you choose to do nothing, remember that is a choice, and consequences flow from your choices. And it does depend on each of you. Do something to make a difference and make sure those sustainable development goals are owned by each of you and delivered by each of you. Because I want us to remember that what each of us does makes a difference. And everything starts with you. It starts with you. And I've put the challenge right now to cities. And the reason I put it on cities is we know, according to everything the World Bank and others are saying, that cities are going to determine the wealth of our world in years to come. This challenge starts here in the Caribbean, but I hope it'll go to Africa, to the Pacific, to the ASEAN region, to Europe and to North America. There'll be 6 challenges, but one people. One people.
We're also observing Colon Cancer Month this March, and we here at the JIS encourage you to screen for early detection and treatment. Let's hear more from gastroenterologist Dr. Mike Mills.
The gastrointestinal tract is a system of organs working together to support the human body. It takes food, digests it, absorbs energy and nutrients, and then removes waste through urine and feces. The esophagus, stomach, pancreas, liver, and colon are all part of this system, and studies show that cancer of these vital organs are becoming increasingly common in Jamaica. One of the leading causes of death among Jamaican men and women is colon cancer. Colon cancer does not discriminate. It's the third most common cause of cancer-related death among Jamaican men and women. But like most lifestyle-related illnesses, you have the power to reduce your risk of developing colon cancer as well as prevent it from occurring. An unhealthy diet, smoking, obesity, alcohol use all increase one's risk for colon cancer.
Everyone is at some risk for colon cancer because everyone has a colon. But some individuals are at higher risk for colon cancer, depending on, for example, their diet or lifestyle. So a diet which is very high in processed meat, a diet which is high in fat, a diet which is low in fiber, these all increase your risk for colon cancer.
Other risk factors include persons with pre-existing medical conditions such as inflammatory bowel disease and ulcerative colitis. The risk level of persons with these diseases increases after 10 years. Therefore, active screening is a necessity. Unfortunately, signs and symptoms of colon cancer often mimic other diseases such as inflammatory bowel disease and irritable bowel syndrome. That's why it's crucial that there's early screening. So visit your doctor if you experience dark or bloody stool, rectal bleeding, diarrhea, constipation, bowel incontinence, or narrowing of the stool that goes beyond a few days, belly pain, anemia, vomiting, or unexplained weight loss.
You can develop a screening protocol in an individual depending on their risk.
It's recommended that colon cancer screening starts between the ages of 45 and 50 years old. The simplest screening tool is a stool test for blood at a local laboratory.
So this is not you looking to see if there's blood in the stool. This is you going to your doctor at the appropriate age. Your doctor sends you to the lab to get a stool sample tested to see if there's a microscopic amount of blood. This is the first sign usually that there is something called a polyp inside the colon. So the polyp is what's known as a precancerous stage. So it's not cancer itself, but we do know that a significant number of cancers will develop in individuals who have had a polyp. And the objective is to find the polyp and remove it before it gets a chance to become cancerous.
If a polyp is found, the next step in the screening process would involve a colonoscopy. In this procedure, a doctor would place a small camera into the bowel to check for the polyp and remove it if present.
We can do other screening tests. The barium enema is not as popular anymore, but it's still possible and is accessible and available, which is an X-ray involving some dye inside the bowel as well to look to see if there's anything growing there. A CT scan of the bowel can also be done as a screening tool to look to see if you have any polyps, which can then be removed at colonoscopy. Outside of screening for the colon, you may also want to try and reduce your risk by modifying your lifestyle. So stopping smoking, reducing your alcohol consumption, and eliminating processed meat in the diet are all important risk factors which can be modified to reduce the risk of colon cancer.
We are now at the end of today's journey. Thanks for staying with us for the entire show. Do join us again tomorrow right here on this station for another informative edition. Until then, share your feedback at jamaicamagazine@jis.gov.jm. Please visit our website jis.gov.jm or follow us on Twitter at JIS News and on Instagram at JIS Voice. On behalf of the entire JIS team, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Walk good.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.